everyone, and welcome back to Bears on Tap. I'm your host, Brandon Suarez. You can follow me on Twitter at Bdon300, and you can follow my co-host, Quinten, at ButtKissStats. Today, we're going to be breaking down the Bears and Vikings this weekend. Second divisional game of the season, a team that we kind of split with, right? Like, we usually beat them, they usually beat us. Like, it just kind of depends on what the year is and what the circumstances are. But first and foremost, let me check in with co-host Quinn. How are you, my guy?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Just looking forward to a hopeful Bears victory,
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, this is a team this year that has underperformed. We talked a little bit last week after we fished the show. They just played the London game last week, too, so there could be a little bit of jet lag issues. But they've gotten super good performances from Jefferson, and they've also gotten ghosted performances. Their running game, which is predicated on Dalvin Cook, has seen him get a little banged up early in the season, but obviously Alexander Madison's no slouch. So this is a team we're very familiar with. Kirk Cousins, as you see in my name for today, Kirk Cousins uses tinfoil on the grill, is not a quarterback that I'm necessarily scared of. I am just scared at how our corners, if we don't have Jalen Johnson, will play against the receivers, because the Vikings receivers are one of the best group of receivers in the league. So
yeah. Yeah, I mean, Cousins is a guy who he is really, really good at taking what you give him, and he can do very well taking what you give him because he's very calculated and careful with it. But I mean, we all know the knock on Kirk Cousins has always been like the joke, like in big games and, primetime games, all that. But like, I think a big part of that is in big moments, defenses don't give you what you need, and that's where he struggles, is when he's not able to take what they're allowing him to take.
yeah, and I think with the way our defense has played, right, the pass rush has been very aggressive. They've been in your face. They've been making things happen and getting in the backfield. And then on the back end, too, like, we've been creating a lot of turnovers this year as compared to the team last year. So I think the defense is a little bit more aggressive. We've seen better play out of guys like Kendall Vildor. Obviously, the rookies have some stuff that is left to be desired, but that's the whole part of the growing process, right? Like, it's not like we expected these guys to come in and instantly be the best at their position. So I think this is a good matchup. Obviously, we're big underdogs. Like, I think we're 7-point underdogs for this week.
Yeah.
So everyone has already counted us out. But their defense, I mean, how do you feel about their defense? They're also a little banged up on the defensive side of the ball. Lewis Seen just went down. They're one of their rookies, but they have a pretty damn good pass rush, I'll say, and that scares me with Justin Fields and our O-line.
Yeah, I mean, I look at their defense, and it's like it's the definition of when you're looking at a roster and you're like, they could be good. It's like in preseason, I felt like you look at them and you're like, if everything goes right, they could have a good defense. But like, it was a lot of like, if everything goes right, Danielle Hunter hasn't played a full season in 2 years leading up to this year. I think he's looked pretty good. I haven't gotten to their film yet on defense. I've only done the offense so far, but Zadarius Smith was hurt all of last year. You didn't know what he still had. He's looked good. I know that just for like before I've done film that he looked very good.
He was popping up all over that game last week in London. Like, he was making plays.
Yeah. But on the rest of their D line, I mean, I still think their interior is pretty weak outside of Dalvin Tomlinson, who is an absolute unit, but which it still blows my mind that the Giants had Dexter Lawrence and Dalvin Tomlinson together and couldn't come close to a winning season because you just could not run the football on those two. But anyways, that's beside the point. Dalvin Tomlinson's about as good as it gets at nose
Fuck
tackle.
the Giants. Fuck the Giants. I can't believe we lost that game.
Outside of him at the nose, like I'm not sure how good that D-line really is. And I mean, Eric Kendricks was outstanding at one point in his career. I don't think he's the same player anymore. his past, like his athleticism, I think has fallen off a little, and he was, a coverage linebacker. It's what he did, relied a lot on athleticism. They got Jordan Hicks next to him at linebacker, who's a guy, you can get by with Jordan Hicks. Okay. But then at corner, I mean, I'm a big fan of Cam Dantzler. I wanted the Bears to draft him a few years ago. I was big on that train, but he's had an up and down career so far. But I mean, I think he's in the thing that really stands out about Dantzler is that his length is ridiculous. He has super long arms, and I don't think it's a coincidence that he's doing well in this Ed Donatel scheme, who, if you don't recall, Ed Donatel was the Bears secondary coach when Vic Fangio was here. He was Fangio's right-hand man for years. And Fangio loved length at cornerback. It was like one of his biggest traits that he cared about. So I don't think it's a coincidence that Dantzler's doing well in this scheme. Patrick Peterson, I think he's actually had a bit of a revival this year after a down year or two or three.
He's looked good so far this year, yeah.
And I mean, honestly, a lot of that probably is, I assume they're playing a lot of quarters, and it's probably just him being able to say, this quarter of the field's mine, and I don't have to worry about all the lateral stuff. I just got to go north-south, is probably helping him a little. And Harrison Smith's still good. He's not what he used to be, but he's still good. He's still, I feel like safety's a spot where as long as you can stay healthy, you can age really gracefully as your athleticism falls down, because so much of it's up here. It's such a mental game. And he still has that, and he's still out there, grinding. But I'm a little bit relieved that we don't have to face Lewis Seen in this game. He's been out since week 1. I was not happy that they drafted him in the first round, playing next to Harrison Smith. But generally, I mean, this defense is, like I said, I squint at him and I go, they look good, but like, it's also
good on paper. Yeah, good on paper defense.
Yeah. It's like anything. If they're very committed and very disciplined in the scheme, they're going to be very good, but it's only their 5th game in this scheme. I think there's probably some holes you can take advantage of, as long as you can slow down Hunter and Smith.
Yeah, and as a resident expert in the Vikings, because I watched their entire game on Sunday, dude, they were getting carved up by Andy fucking Dalton. So, like,
yeah,
I know we haven't been great through the air this year, right? It hasn't looked pretty, but the defense the shots can be had, right? And one thing that I noticed last week too, when I was watching the game too, was the Saints ran the ball all over the Vikings. So, like you said, kind of to your point, looks good on paper, has a lot of dudes, but hasn't put that same production back on the paper for this year. Like, I think, like I said at the top of the show, it's a team that overall has underperformed. And the Vikings are a weird team because everyone kind of expected them to compete with the Packers this year, but maybe they're a couple pieces away. Maybe they're right around that 9-win or 8-win team. But I don't know. I feel like we could definitely take more shots than we've been taking against this defense in the past few weeks. Like, we made the Giants' defense look like the 85 fucking Bears, and it was sickening.
Yeah, I mean, it's all going to come down to how you slow down Zadarius Smith and Danielle Hunter. I mean, if they're blowing by Borum and Jones, or if Zadarius Smith is known to play inside on passing downs. Like, if they're pitting him against Lucas Patrick at left guard, or like they think he can overpower him, that gets real tough to take shots. It's just the reality of having a rough offensive line and a QB who does not navigate pressure well at this point in his career. But if they can slow those guys down, there should be plenty of room to do stuff and to make plays. I mean, Fields played some really good football against the Vikings last year. I think they might have been a better defense on paper last year. I don't think the scheme was as good, but they might have been better on paper.
Yeah, and I think from our offense, right? Like our offensive standpoint, we haven't seen any progression through the first 4 weeks of the season. We've kind of just seen, like, if you look at it for what it is, the first week, you're not really going to see anything, right? It was a hurricane, Soldier Field. You can't really play well in that. Second week, it's the Packers. You get the early touchdown, and just like in typical Packers game fashion, it's like, oh shit, like maybe we have a chance. And then you end up getting shit pumped, and you can't do anything for the rest of the game. And then like Texans game, not a great offensive performance, not a terrible one. The defense really bailed us out at the end with Roquan. And then last week, it's just like in 4 weeks, we have no identity. Obviously, we know we're going to run the football, but there's no real like passing concepts that you see that are worked week in and week out. When we complete a pass, it's like when you go, well, I don't have kids, but when we played, it's like when you're playing in little fucking league and the kid completes the first pass of the game to like one of the two tight ends that are on the field as you run the wing tee and you hand it off 90% of the time. So it's sad, it's sickening, but at a certain point, you have to take the training wheels off and you have to let Justin Fields sink or swim. And why not try it against a division opponent? Like, why not? That's what I'm kind of like. Take shots if you can get that. Like you said, if you can get that time and the offensive line, which we haven't gotten to, we have big news and bad news on the offensive line front that we have to get to. But if you can get the protection up front and Justin Fields can find receivers open, and like you said, it's quarters, so maybe we could hit the intermediate routes and then eventually take our shots, then we could get more points than fucking the 13 to 17 points a game that we're averaging. Like maybe we could see a 21 or a 24 point performance, which to other teams would be like 30 or 40 points. But like, dude, just give me a game where we score 3 touchdowns. And You know what I'm saying?
Well, so, I mean, they scored 3 touchdowns week 1 and they've scored 3 touchdowns since.
It's gross, dude. It's gross. We're good at kicking
scored
field
a touchdown in 5.5 quarters now. It's awful.
Yeah. Thank you to the Money Badger for keeping us in the game last week.
Yeah, so week 15 last year, Justin Fields had a 73.5 passer or PFF rating and 285 passing yards against Minnesota. I mean, he had a good game, 3 big time throws. I mean, he clearly was able to do something last year, so I think the hope is that he's able to kind of make some magic again this year. One of the things that I will say with the quarters defense, it's almost like the way Fangio ran it and the way I assume Donatel runs it is it's that man match quarters. So like it's almost like they're playing man coverage a lot of the game.
Exactly, yeah.
Like,
and they're usually in the back pedal.
Straight man, yeah. But and so it's like when you're running deep routes, you're 1-on-1, you know. So I mean, if you can burn a 1-on-1 guy, they're going to have shots against a man match quarters that if they're not taking sacks before they can outrun them, you know?
Yeah. And for our viewers that don't necessarily know, just imagine like 4 people lined up and just backpedaling. You know what I'm saying? And they each get that one area or one quarter of the field, as opposed to like cover 2, where it's just like where you see Eddie Jackson run 38 yards back and catch a Willie Mays pick over his head. So a little less responsibility, to your point about Patrick Peterson and maybe why he's been able to play a little bit better. He had a couple PBUs that I saw that were pretty nice. And I'm like, dude, this guy's got to be like 36 years old to be playing corner. Nuts.
Well, so a lot of the like you can throw it back to the 2018 Bears because everyone remembers that, right? Yeah. So it was like the quarters defense was like Prince Amukamara had the sideline to halfway between the midfield and the sideline. So that first quarter, then from where Prince's zone ended, say that Amos had that to the middle of the field, and then middle of the field to the next quarter was Eddie Jackson, and from there to the other sideline was Kyle Fuller. Now, a lot of the variations that they really threw out there, which is where it gets really interesting. Like when you have a guy like Kyle Fuller, who is as rangy as he was, you could start playing, I believe it's cover 6, where you're talking.
Oh, yeah. That's some sicko shit, dude.
Like So at that point, you're saying, okay, you got, and this is what Fangio loved to do. Prince had the one quarter deep. That quarter of the field was his all the way to the end zone. And then say that you'd have Eddie Jackson in that next quarter, and it's super condensed for Eddie Jackson with his range. So all his range is really just going north south at that point. And then you could bring Amos down into the box or into a zone hook or something like that, and then Fuller could take it the other half of the field because he was so rangy. Or the way it got really interesting was when you did it with Prince, Amos, and Fuller. So Prince and Amos had the 2 quarters, and Fuller had the half, and then you could just play a robber with Eddie, and that was when Eddie was making some nasty plays. Sorry,
Yeah.
I get hyped up about.
No, that defense is very complex when you break it all down, and honestly, like when it allows your players to be able to make jumps on the ball or to be able to be aggressive because you know that you have that specific area,
Yeah.
it's different. And they have
so cool is like, say that Kirk Cousins' first read was to Prince. He sees Prince, says, okay, they're in quarters. He goes to make a throw to another side, but that side's in cover too. You know, that's where that's a completely different coverage.
his brain
He's
is
just
just
reacting, or vice versa. He reads cover 2 over here, so he goes over here, and they're in quarters. Like it's a chess match coverage, and it's fun to think about.
yeah. Offensively, though, I think this is a team that presents our defense maybe probably the second best offense in the schedule so far that we've played. But without Jalen Johnson, I am like worried for our young corners against Thielen and Jefferson because that's just nothing to play with, you know.
Honestly, I touched on this on the post game last week. If I'm Eberflus, I'm putting anyone else in nickel right now, and I'm hoping that because Gordon has looked solid on the outside. Nickel is where he's been getting torched. I wouldn't even risk him getting destroyed by Jefferson in the slot because that's what they're going to do. You know, they're going to put Jefferson in the slot all game if Gordon's there, and I'd have him playing outside, just playing aside whoever goes there and go make some plays, kid, because he's looked solid there. It's that nickel corner spot that is so difficult.
Yeah, and a lot of times too, you got motion, you got stuff moving in and around that area. Like those guys are always moving around. You have to worry about the end arounds too with Justin Jefferson and Thielen. They've shown in the past
Well,
that they
so
do that.
if you want a comparison like this, the Vikings or their new head coach Kevin O'Connell, he was the Rams offensive coordinator last year. Cooper Kupp and Justin Jefferson are playing very similar roles. So you're talking about Cooper Kupp going in out of the slot into the backfield like that. That's the role that you're looking at with Jefferson right now.
Yeah, and luckily for Jefferson, there's other players in that offense, so he doesn't have to get 22 targets a game. But I love Justin Jefferson as a player on my fantasy team, but I'm gonna have to sit him on the bench and just hope that that's good omen to keep him from scoring points. But it's a very interesting matchup, but all of a sudden our mindset and the conversation completely changes, even if it's Jalen Johnson at 80%. You know what I'm saying? Because Jalen Johnson's battled with him throughout his career so far. And if Jalen could come back, I really want him there. But if he isn't 100%, I guess maybe it's not worth it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, his whole injury has been weird. Like
we haven't really heard much.
Does anyone really know how? Like, we just know it was a practice. It happened in practice.
Yeah, it happened in the middle of the week at practice.
This is about to be if he misses this game, it's his third missed game. Like, I mean, and part of me was like looking back when they hired Eberflus, the first thing I thought of was like, track shoes don't translate to stretching. And we saw that in 2004 with Lovie Smith with a bunch of dudes tearing up their hamstrings in Lovie's first year. And I hope it's not something like that because he's going to be out for, more than a few weeks if it's a hamstring.
Yeah, and those are nasty issues that can continue to linger throughout the season. Like if you get a
Yeah.
hamstring pull once, you're probably going to get another one before the end of it. And I think right now the most important thing going into this game is just figuring out a way to make them beat you outside of Jefferson and Thielen. Make them beat us with Irv Smith. Make them beat us with Dalvin Cook. Like, you know what I'm saying? We can't let them take the easy stuff. And I think the most important thing too on defense, especially if we want to win this game, because you're not listening to this podcast if you don't want us to win this game. But well, actually, I found out through my Huskies podcast that you get some enemies that will come over for a listen. So welcome to the show. But on this show, we believe the Bears will win this week. And I think we need to win the turnover battle. And I think we need to win it by more than one turnover. Like I think we need 2+ turnovers, whether it's a pick and a fumble, a couple picks. If you've noticed the most fun games that we've had with the Vikings, the ones that we usually end up winning over the years, my friend Eddie gets involved. And I'd love to see a pick six on Kirk Cousins because that would just be beautiful this week.
Yeah, looking at so for this week, like I usually review tape of one game of the opponent to for my game preview article, and I put it out on YouTube. And I just got done with the Vikings offense. I reviewed their game against the Saints last week, which Saints are a pretty good defense, so like pretty talented. So I don't know if it's the most comparable thing, but it was either them, the Packers, or the Lions or the Eagles, and I felt like the Saints were the most reasonable
Yeah, that
choice.
was that was the closest like back and forth game that they played all year. Everything
Yeah,
else.
I felt like the game would give me the most up and down, not just either or. And really, I mean, one thing I noticed is once, so this is still a new offense for them. Like this is a completely, not completely, because they were under Kubiak before, so there's probably some similarities, but very much a new offense for their personnel, for their quarterback, for their receivers. And I noticed two plays in a row, two passes in a row, where the receivers were either confused or hesitant, or clearly ran the wrong route. And after that, it was like Kirk Cousins forced a ball into Adam Thielen, the next pass he had, which was like it was not open. The corner made a play on it. He didn't get a pick, but he made it pretty easily got his hand in there. And then a few plays later, he forced a ball deep to I think it was Jefferson into. I mean, I want to call it double coverage. There were two guys there. The throw probably looked more open when he made it than it ended
Yeah.
up being. The safety covered a lot of ground to get there, and he almost had the pick. They actually got bailed out by pass interference on the corner on that play, but like the safety almost had a pick. And like that's the type of play Eddie Jackson can make. That type of range. That's what Eddie Jackson brings to your team. And as Kirk Cousins starts to get a little frustrated in the offense, it seems like he's forcing the ball more. And it's like we've always kind of seen with Kirk Cousins. It's like in big moments, or when not necessarily big moments, but like when the adrenaline is a little higher, he tends to make some decisions that are questionable. Um, which was like in that before that one that the safety ranged over and almost picked. He was at the line of scrimmage, changing everything, screaming like they'd just gotten a big like third down conversion before. It's like his adrenaline's pumping as high as it can be, and then he's making a throw that's like, should I have made that?
Yeah, no, Kirk Cousins is an all-time like scapegoat in the NFL. Even when he was with Washington, like he's
Yeah,
when he's good, it's great, right? Like he's throwing
yeah,
for 4,000 yards. All your receivers are getting involved. Your offense is firing on all cylinders. But when it's bad, it is ugly, man. Like
yeah,
it's like WTF picks. Like he's just looking up, like what the fuck, dude. And I don't know. He is like you said in those pressure situations, he crumbles. Like he's not made for that big moment. And I'm not going to call a division game against the Bears like the biggest moment of his career because, like I said, he's probably split with us. I don't know if he played us when he was with Washington, but he's probably about 50-50 in games that he's played against us. It give or take a few, like maybe they're ahead of us by one or two, but we're not counting here. We're just going off top. And I think with the turnover situation, the way we've been able to create them and the way you just described, like, dude, give me like a 3-pick, like, just give me Kirk Cousins on a fucking piece of tinfoil and let's throw him on the Weber grill and let's call it a day. Like, that's all I want.
Yeah. So for that to happen, we need the interior D line to have a hell of a game because they're a very meh unit. You know, they haven't really shown us a lot yet.
We've got it from the outside, though. The outside pressure's been better.
But the interior pressure is what can really get Cousins. I mainly say that because the Vikings tackles are good. Like this is the first time in years that I feel like the Vikings offensive line has bookends that are quality football players. And that just mutes a lot of the outside pressure. But the interior pressure, the Vikings interior O-line seems like they can be pushed around to me. It's just a question of whether the Bears are capable of pushing around.
Yeah, and another thing too is both their backs are quality. I'll say quality chippers. They're just good backs to have next to Kirk Cousins in the backfield if you need a nice chip or if you need just a little extra protection for that split second to get a throw off. So even the blitzing pressure is going to be under a little bit more pressure, if you will, this week. But the most important thing for that front seven is for that front four to get as much pressure and us to not have to blitz, because when you start blitzing Kirk Cousins, even if you don't get home, you're leaving people out on islands. And, like, let's be honest, their players at the skill positions are better than our players defending those players on the skill positions. So we may be able to get away with a few plays, but over the course of the game, eventually, like, those guys are going to make the plays that they usually do on Sundays, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I expect to see Eberflus simulate quite a bit of pressure up the A gap in this game. And hopefully bring guys here and there, because if you never bring them, it's like the bluffing is kind of pointless. But the Saints really gave the interior O-line of the Vikings fits this past Sunday with the double A gap pressure. And whether they were coming, whether they weren't coming, they brought them when they weren't even showing, stuff like that. Like, they got free runners at Kirk Cousins a few times, which
causes him to shit his pants. Yeah.
Yeah. That's about when he started rattling a little bit and like kind of the throws started sailing a little more. And then it led to the kind of the fuck it moments of, Rex Grossman releasing the dragon.
$84 million and another extension for this fucking dork, dude. It's crazy. I feel bad for Vikings fans, but then again, I don't, because they're Vikings fans. They made that choice on their own. Like, you decided to support a sad franchise, and we have to find a way to beat them. Is this game at home or away? I think it's at.
It's in Minnesota.
Yeah, so that. I would say if we were
place to play, but
yeah, if we were 7-point dogs at home, I would be a little scared. But
yeah, I don't know the numbers on it. I haven't looked it up, but I want to say the numbers are very unfavorable for teams who elect to not take a bye after going to London.
Ooh.
But I'm not sure about that. I mean, so I heard someone talking about it. I forget what podcast it was on, but they were saying that, the flight from like London to say that you're like your team in New York, the flight from London to New York really isn't that much worse than the flight from New York to like LA.
Yeah.
But like Minnesota to London might be, it's like 1.5 of those. And then it was a former player, I think it was Deontay Lee with The Athletic who was talking about it. And he was saying that, the flight's not really the biggest problem. And like, neither is the mental clock, because like you're playing at 9:30 a.m. this time. Like, you're probably not resetting your clock while you're there. You're like sleeping during the day and stuff. but it's more like you just got back from a vacation, and you have to go eat groceries and you have to like do all this laundry and like all this everyday stuff that you don't think about with these guys. But that's like he said, that's the biggest impact of like
Listen,
playing
though,
overseas.
Kirk Cousins ran out of Reynolds wrap, right? And if you know anything about Kirk Cousins, outside of the Sunday 1 o'clock window, which happens to be the game that we play this week, he is a shell of himself. So maybe he's getting over a little bit of jet lag. Maybe he had a couple extra crumpets, maybe some more, fish and chips. I don't know, but Kirk
Actually, so
Cousins.
I had a theory about him playing in London. That was like why I didn't bet that game, but I was like, if I was betting it, I bet the Vikings because this is the anti-prime time. He's gonna get half the viewers he gets at noon.
And everyone's gonna be in different jerseys. No, I made 2 bets on that game. Their team total, which was like a double explosion because Justin Jefferson scored the touchdown to put it over, and then like just as much as that explosion happened, the kicker missed the extra point, so the 3.5 just died right there. So I was like, all right, we just need overtime, and we did not. Let me tell you, we did not get overtime. So, but it is what it is. I think it's going to be closer or at least around 7 points, and I also anticipate, similar to weeks past, that this line will move more in our favor than it does the Vikings. Like you're more likely to see like an 8 or an 8.5 than you are a 6.5 come Sunday.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, so
the Bears haven't given bettors any reason to believe in them.
Exactly.
Outside of week 1.
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if I will be betting on this team for the foreseeable future unless it's against teams like the Commanders. I was about to call them the football team again, but then I remembered they've been newly named. But yeah, that's the game that follows this up. We got Thursday night right after this, so it's going to be, you're going to see short week for podcasters. It's going to be tough on us. Couple quick episodes, couple quick hitters. Might as well just go like every day between Sunday and Thursday, just get everyone warmed up. But as far as offense goes for this game, so you're Matt Eberflus. Who is the most important person to you on the offense in order for us to win this game this week?
It's Lucas Patrick. He's got to fill in admirably. I mean, the passing game noticeably got worse when Cody Whitehair left last week. The pass protection noticeably got worse. Like I mean, I think there were actually more sacks taken when Whitehair was in the game than Patrick, but I think the pressure was a lot worse, or a lot more consistent. And they need to be able to hold up, and that starts with Patrick being a stalwart at left guard, which can help Mustafa and can help Jones. And I mean, I'm not too worried about the right side. And I feel like Jenkins has been rock solid, and I think Borum is Charles Leno. Like he's good enough, you can get by with him.
Don't say that, because there's a picture that's floating around on Twitter of Charles Leno blocking his teammate last week. So,
man, people just love to hate on Chuck. But like, the dude was solid. He was good enough.
I didn't hate Charles Leno. I just hated that his wife just got on Twitter after every game, and I'm just like, Jesus Christ, stop.
She's up mute buttons for.
Yeah, no, I would sometimes search for it just to be irrationally angry. But it's kind of like how Matthew Stafford's wife pisses people off. Like, I don't know. Speaking of wives, bring up wives, an important divorce is upon this league. Tom Brady and Giselle are about to get a little divorce, it looks like. So I pray we don't play them this year. We don't have Tampa on the schedule, right?
No.
Not yet. Another guy too that I know nobody cares about. I got him on fantasy, and I'm like, okay, he's been sleeping on the couch. It's about to go get him a nice little loft in Tampa somewhere, and he is about to go the fuck off for the rest of the season. But
I don't know, man. Giselle's a witch.
Oh, I didn't think about that. That too, yeah.
Giselle has been the reason her spells are why Tom Brady is still around, and now they're gone. My only
Yeah.
question is Tom Brady smart enough to have like made the spells like unbreakable?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I mean, Father Time catches up with everyone, so he needs to use like his elixir, his orb that just makes him what is it, immortal? Is what they say, where he just can't
Yeah.
die. Like he just plays until he's like 80. But yeah, weird situation going on there. But they haven't looked good at all. They had their best offensive performance this last week, and Bdon came through with the Chiefs money line to bring it back even on the day Sunday. So
Yeah.
that was an easy one. But
Oh yeah.
the NFC is wide open this year, right? Like the Rams don't look good. The Packers have not looked good. The Cowboys have looked a lot better than everyone would have expected them, considering that Dak went down. And like if I had to sit here right now and gun to head pick someone to win the NFC, I honestly couldn't even tell you.
Yeah, I don't even know.
Exactly, bro. It's that wide open this year. Not saying that we're in that mix, but we'll be
I
on
mean,
the in the hunt graphic.
I've been saying since the season started, this is going to be one of those years where the 9-7 Eli Manning Giants win the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
Like,
because dude,
it has to happen.
The Bills haven't looked good either, and they were like, dude, they were like plus 300 to win the Super Bowl. Like that is gross odds that you shouldn't even get unless you're already in the playoffs. You know what I'm saying? Like that is way too
Yeah.
low of odds to be betting on anyone to win the Super Bowl. 32 teams, there's no shot. So much happens over the course of the season. That's terrible.
Like, teams that could surprise are really like I don't think the Vikings will do it. First year head coach. It won't be a first year head coach. I mean, so if we want to go like full like John Fox 2001 Panthers, the Atlanta Falcons are your team.
Holy shit, dude! Stop. Undefeated against the spread. Marcus Mariota's out there throwing like 7 for 19 over the course of like a whole game and still finding ways to win football games.
Or it could be the Seahawks.
Oh my god! Stop it.
Who I said would have the #1 pick this year.
Dude, hey, Geno Smith's looked good though.
I know,
He's looked good. He has looked good this year. So, all right. So we got a little off the rails there to start talking about random NFL stuff. But back to our matchup. So, flip sides, we'll go to the defensive side of the ball. Who has to have the best game in this game with so many weapons on the other side of the field?
Angelo Blackson needs to be a bully. He needs to be throwing guys around. Like, I'm not joking when I say so Bradbury's undersized with short arms at center, right? Bad
like
length,
a T-Rex,
undersized.
A fat T-Rex.
Yeah, he just doesn't have the power to stand up to guys who are bigger and stronger than him, and he's a good center, but he just struggles with the anchor. And Ezra Cleveland has a lot of the measurables you want, but him and Ed Ingram at guard, like I just watching the tape, it was just like I couldn't believe how many times they were sitting waiting for their block to come to them flat-footed as opposed to going and hitting their block. And it like that's the difference between Roquan Smith squeaking by you or Roquan Smith getting flushed out of the play, you know? And it happened a lot in the run game. But, I mean, that's even more of a testament to a guy like Blackson, though, I think Blackson has the power to really make the day hard on these guys. I'm not sure that I think Jones is a bit more of a finesse player, but Blackson reminds me more of like that. He has some power that can be dominant at times. It's not consistently dominant, but we've seen him throw guys around before. So that's why I say him. I want to see him throw around the interior of this Vikings O-line and really just kind of get after Cousins, kind of mess up their plans in the run game. This is a big game for Angelo Blackson, in my opinion.
So for me, I'll go offense first, and this is some real sick shit that you're about to hear, but just get ready for it. Like we said earlier, right? Paper good defense, not actually good defense. So I think I'm going to say total yards. I think Justin Fields accounts for 250 total yards. I will say I don't know which if he gets like 125 rushing yards, 125 pass, like split
Wait,
right down the
are
middle.
we talking net yards where you deduct sack yards?
Oh yeah. So yeah, fucking that yards.
We can just say we're not.
Yeah, well, we're just going meatball yards. How about that? Like
Okay,
as many
I like that.
meatballs
Meatball yards.
as many meatballs as you can fit in a French roll before you throw the cheese on top is the yards that we count here at Bears on Tap. But I also, in that same sense, I want to see him play a perfect game with the football. So no picks, no fumbles. Just find a way to put our team in a better position to win because through week four he's been one of the main people that has gotten in our way, right? Like obviously Luke Getsy hasn't called plays that have been great in certain situations, but Justin Fields has been one of the worst performing players on our offense. It sucks to have to actually say that sentence out loud, but it is the fact of the matter. So you just want to see him take small steps. And I think this week, like I said earlier in the show, be a little bit more aggressive. Take more shots down the field. You got Mooney involved last week. I think he had over 100 yards. You've been getting Komet more involved over the last few weeks. And then we just need a little bit of something out of the other guys, the St. Browns, the Pringles, those type of guys. So obviously we haven't even talked about the injuries, but I'm assuming that David Montgomery is still out for this game.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to peep at the injury report yet.
I'll run through it real quick, but let me give my defensive. So on defense, I'm such a meatball for Eddie Jackson, and he's so fucking back, baby. I want another interception out of Eddie Jackson, but in something that can't be measured. I want him to lead the defense out there because this week coming up against the Vikings, unless we get a couple guys back, it's a young unit, especially in his area of the defense in the secondary. They haven't gone up against this caliber of receivers yet. So we need Coach Eddie. We need Pick Eddie. We need Six Eddie. I need every version of Eddie Jackson that we can get out there on Sunday leading that secondary. But to the injury report, so we'll start on the Viking side, less players than ours, and then we'll go through ours after that. But you talked a little bit about him earlier in the week, Cameron Dantzler. I know he did go down last week in that Saints game, but he was a full participant today. Zadarius Smith, outside linebacker. He's pretty much just a pass rusher. He doesn't do too much covering. His knee is what's ailing him, but he was a limited participant. And then Andrew Booth, cornerback that we talked a lot about, could have been a potential guy that ended up with us in the draft this year, was a limited participant as well. So a little banged up in the secondary and all on the defense. So, I mean, even if one or two of those three guys is out, that significantly changes, the level of players because those are all three quality players that are on the injured list for them,
Yeah. Has Booth played much this year?
I don't know if he has. I just know Dantzler went down.
He might have been injured like all year so far.
Or their version of Velus Jones.
Yeah, Booth hasn't played a snap yet this year. So he could be making his debut this
So maybe we could cook him up real quick, give him his welcome to the NFL moment with Darnell Mooney, right?
Yeah, pick up your teammate. Pick up Kyler Gordon by picking Andrew Booth Jr.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it can't be as bad as that.
Yeah, there was something else I was thinking about with the Vikings offense, but I can't put my finger on it. So they're like what I noticed in the Saints game, their first like 4 throws were all within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage, outside the numbers. Safe throws to get a rhythm going. Try to stop it. Try to, keep them from getting in that rhythm. Be ready for it. I don't think they're going to be attacking downfield early. I think they're going to be trying to get Kirk Cousins getting in the fields, not just Cousins, but Jefferson and Thielen, getting them, feeling like the man. So be ready for it. Be ready to jump a route here or there and try to make a play. Because, I mean, from what I saw, it was predetermined reads on the first three throws of I'm going there, I'm going there, I'm going there. And it was just, to get in that rhythm. And
Oh
the
yeah,
one other thing I noticed,
he loves a forced throw like he loves a fucking grilled steak on a piece of tinfoil.
but so where they changed, like into the second quarter, they started changing it. Like he started hitting second reads and third reads, and it's like, but they clearly it was pretty clear that they wanted to get that rhythm set early for their guys. Because Cousins is a rhythm passer. You know, he's a guy who he needs to have that feel. Um, and the other thing that I noticed, especially thinking about how this head coach comes from the McVay tree and all the Goff years he was there, and um, they get the snap off very early in the play clock consistently. They are trying to play fast, ahead of the defense, get the play in, get it out, snap it before there's even 15 seconds left on the play clock. But when they don't, this is something that we saw with the McVay offense when Goff was there. Late rotations are a big help, even when they do get it off quick. Because to me, it sounds like the coach is giving them a lot of info through the headset, and it clicks off at 15 seconds is when the headset and the helmet clicks off, so you can't talk to him anymore. Late rotations are going to change what the coach, like the facts that the coach was telling you. Like that's how Fangio and Belichick beat Goff in 2018, and it kind of exposed him because they were rotating late. They were showing nothing pre-snap and then rotating into their coverages late, and that's one of Eddie Jackson's biggest strong suits is his ability to do that.
Yeah, I was at that game. That was one of the most fun sporting events that I've ever went to
I
because it
bet.
was just such a fucking slobber knocker, like just such an ugly game. Neither team actually moved the ball. It was all defense. But yeah, it's a big one this week, and they got every opportunity in front of them because it's an offense that, even though they will probably take a little while to get going, as the game goes on, they start taking more and more shots down the field, and they have the receivers that can make those type of plays. And I mean, just if we can, please let us get Jalen Johnson back. We're not asking for much. Our expectations aren't high, but I would love our chances a lot more going into battle with Jalen Johnson for this matchup. But other than that, I don't really have too much. Do you have anything else that you want to cover?
Yeah, just one more thing. So Jefferson's big catch last week was like a 50-yard catch. It was one of those plays where I was like, how the hell did he get that wide open? Um, I'll tell you how. Because the Vikings last week, I think it was only last week. I haven't checked the other film, but they were running from under center and like heavy formation, so double tight end, double running back, something like that, full back in there, and they were passing primarily from spread shotgun sets that were condensed sets with a lot of receivers out there. So by condensed sets, I mean they're all inside the hashes. And the Saints caught on to that and started, know when it was a run, when it was a run, know when it was a pass, when it was a pass, until that Jefferson play. Because the Vikings said, we know that you know, and the Saints didn't know, we know that you know that we know. Like their linebackers bit hard on the play action and they panicked backwards in coverage. One of their linebackers took out the guy covering Jefferson. Like they just tripped over each other, and Jefferson's running free over the middle of the field. That's what that type of stuff gets you. So that's just something to be cautious of, that they are aware of their tendencies.
Yeah, and over the course of the game, we've seen that defensively, like we've been able to make good adjustments to what teams are giving us. Now, last week may be an exception to the rule because we saw the Wildcat and we were just like, yeah, let's cover Daniel Jones because he's a clear threat on this play. But it's a team that we're overly familiar with, right? Like even though Eberflus is new, these players, well, a lot of these players are new, but the majority of our players, which is only 37% that are returning to this team from seasons past, they are very familiar with how to attack this team both on offense and defense. But I think it's closer than 7 points. I'll probably end up being a sucker and taking the Bears because I'm just an asshole like that. But what do you have for a final score prediction?
I think I forget what I put in my article. I think I had Vikings by 8.
Oh, terrible. All right, so I'll
Minnesota's a tough place to play, man. It's a tough place to play.
break all the glass while you're up there, boys. Bears by a welcome back Cairo Santos field goal. Let me think of a stupid score because that's what it's going to be. It's going to be 27-24 Bears.
There you go. If it's any consolation, the meatball model has the Bears winning by 23. So
yes. So, and like we said, line up
that's
like
23 kick return touchdowns. Not
all Velus because he's so yeah. Give me a Velus. Okay, we didn't talk about special teams, but give me something more than what we saw from Velus Jones last week because it wasn't pretty, and they didn't really even bring him out, if at all, on offense. I don't remember really seeing him that much on offense, if at all. And obviously, he didn't make a splash on special teams. So find a way to get Velus involved, but
I mean, he made a splash.
Yeah, the wrong splash. He needed his water wings or he needed his flotation device because he made too big of a splash. But
yeah, he didn't play a single offensive snap last week.
Yeah, that's gross. So get him out there on those corners. Get Darnell Mooney out there on those corners. Utilize Cole Kmet. Get Fields out of the pocket because that pass rush is going to be in his face. And one final note before we wrap up. So on our side of the injury report, players that did not practice today, again, Dane Cruikshank, Jalen Johnson, Jalen Jones, and then Monty, and then limited participants for Ryan Griffin and Matt Adams. So
getting Ryan Griffin back would be big. They in week 1, he outsnapped Cole Kmet.
He's played well,
Griffin a lot.
Yeah, he's played well so far. So I wouldn't hate having him back for this game. We need that veteran presence, but you got to find a way to win a football game in a hostile environment with a bunch of people dressed up as Vikings, and you just hate to see it for them, but we're going to go in there and hopefully find a way to get us our third win on the season. And whether we win, lose, or the very rare tie, which now that I say that, that's a possibility. Maybe the game goes to overtime, but we got to find a way to win it. And whether we win or lose, we'll be back with you guys Sunday right after the final whistle to recap it. But again, this was Bears on Tap presented to you by On Tap Sportsnet. I'm your host, Brandon Suarez. You can follow me on Twitter at Bdon300, and you can follow my co-host Quinten at ButtKissStats. And then make sure to check out OnTapSportsnet.com and then our main account at Bears on Tap. We got nothing else for you guys. Really do appreciate you for listening. Got nothing else. We'll be back with you a little in the mid-afternoon Sunday. And bear down.
Bear down.